Now, for a lot of people, all they know about King Arthur is what they saw in Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Victory is mine. We thank thee, Lord, that in thy mouth.
Or, contrariwise, what they saw in Walt Disney's The Sword and the Stone. Certainly, King Arthur was written a great deal about in the Middle Ages, and he continues to be a name down to our own time. But who or what was he really? Left to their own devices, the Romans in Britain, the Roman Britons, really, had to look after themselves. And apparently, the root of the King Arthur legend lies in the activities of the last Dux Bellorum of Britain, the last Duke of Battles, who went from one end of the country fighting off various enemies, trying to keep the light of the faith, the light of civilization, alive in Britain. Now, bear in mind that the people of Britain at that time were not English. They were, in fact, Celts, speaking Latin to begin with, although they had their own language, their own Celtic language. As the memory of Arthur blurred after his death, his feats became ever more legendary, and his stories into people who were being steadily driven westward by the invading Angles and Saxons became ever greater. In time, the descendants of the Britons would be confined to the northern area of England, southern area of Scotland that we call Strathclyde or Cumbria, to Wales, to Cornwall, and then a group of them fled over the English Channel to Brittany, Little Britain. Amongst these four peoples, the stories of King Arthur slowly, gradually came into the version that we know now. In 1066, the Christianized Anglo-Saxons were invaded and defeated by the equally Christian Normans. And from that union descends the English people that we know today. But in the meantime, the stories of Arthur that had gone to Brittany had become popular in France, and they were brought back to England by the Normans. And it's from that time onward that King Arthur became a folk hero to the English, which is kind of ironic, given that it was their ancestors who were fighting him. But nevertheless, they were the ones who elaborated the legend. But it became extremely popular in France, Spain, Germany, and throughout Europe until, by the high Middle Ages, King Arthur was accepted as an absolute paladin of chivalry, one of the great examples of what a knight should be. Well, what were those qualities that Arthur exhibited? Severalfold. One is willing to sacrifice himself for his colleagues. The early knights looked at the cross as a symbol of what they ought to be. Greater love hath no man than he lay down his life for his friends. That became a part of chivalry very early on, and King Arthur exemplified it. His generosity to his band of retainers, the Knights of the Round Table, many of whom, if not all, had at least folkloric antecedents, if not real world. Their relationships with each other, their bond to their king, these two became part of what it was to be a true and loyal knight. The respect for ladies, the defense of the faith against barbaric outsiders, all of these became part of the Arthurian legend. And in time, as it became popular in the 1200s, outside of England, it became to reinforce what chivalry meant for the rest of Europe, because chivalry was an institution that would go all the way from Portugal almost to Russia. Now, The semi-barbaric Franks and Visigoths and so forth, as they converted in their particular stories, they too became more and more enamored of a baptized code of ethics for warfare. And it was from the ranks of the Franks that a second such person emerged, a little more historically definite than King Arthur, and that was Charlemagne. He was the king of the Franks, who in 800, having come down to Rome to rescue the Pope, was crowned emperor in the West, the first Holy Roman Emperor, by Pope St. Leo III on Christmas Day of 800. But like King Arthur, he had a group of close friends, the 12 paladins, who were at his side in his various conflicts. He fought the Moors in Spain, as Arthur had fought the Saxons. He also fought the Avars and the Saxons and a lot of other peoples for the sake of the faith. He encouraged learning. In many ways, Charlemagne was the father of Europe. And in this, too, he was seen as a great exemplar of chivalry. A few hundred years later, after his time, in 1097, the First Crusade, of which more shortly, began. It eventually would liberate Jerusalem from the Moors and establish the Kingdom of Jerusalem.